And one of the strangest places on the face of the planet is a section of rural Missouri, generally known as the Marley Woods, a hotbed of really strange stuff, strange phenomena such as creatures, cryptid creatures, orbs, unusual craft, different kinds of beings, ghost-type phenomena, all of them mixed in the same place in a similar way to what's been reported at Skinwalker Ranch. Ted Phillips has moved on, but his work, his legacy are in good hands with Tom Ferrario, who's continuing the investigation of Marley Woods, and in a moment he's going to bring us up to date what's going on there. Thomas Ferrario has a diverse background. He's worked as a dive master, a machinist, electrical engineer on projects in the U.S., China, and Bermuda. He's been an independent UFO researcher since 1969, worked for a time for MUFON, Missouri, as a section director and assistant state director. He co-founded the MUFON dive team, which we're going to ask about. Then he joined Ted Phillips as Phillips' assistant back in 2006, became part of Ted's SIU team. He assisted Ted on the Marley Woods project and on the Moonshaft project that we're going to get into. Tom Ferrario, welcome back to Coast to Coast.
Well, hello, George. It's good to be back. I can't believe it's 2 years since Ted passed, and I miss him every day, and I just miss his input and his intellect, and believe me, I need a lot of that at Marley Woods, but it's just good to be back with you, and I feel we got some in common. You're being so virtually wrote the book on Skinwalker, and I had a connection and still do with Skinwalker Ranch, and but it's been an incredible time, and a lot of going on and updates that I can bring you up to date on. And
good. Let's talk about Ted, your friend Ted, for a moment.
Yes.
You know, he was a giant in the field. I was so happy when he first came on the program, and we got to review his career and had him on a couple more times. And, you know, it is a big loss for him to be gone. He was a giant in the sense of he brought respectability to one aspect of UFO research that was sorely missing. And it was these landing site trace cases. He basically invented it and worked with J. Allen Hynek. Can you fill us in a little bit on that part of his life and how it might have inspired you?
He became a good friend of Allen, and Allen thought that it should be specialized in that field of physical trace cases. And, of course, doing the documentation and software, he had Jacques Vallée on one side of him, and he had Ted Phillips out in the field doing the physical trace cases and doing the soil analysis and compaction test. And Ted was a master at he could determine the exact weight of a 30, 40, 60-foot disc by the imprints put down in the typical types of soil. And, he was an engineer by trade, and he just brought so much to the table. Ted was a professional photographer, musician. He was just a multi-talented individual that just was a part of the puzzle with Allen, and they worked so well together. And when Allen was sick or had prior engagements, Ted filled in for Allen in cases across the globe. And so that was his background working with Allen, and he was just such a loss when he passed.
The idea of landing site trace cases was so critical in the development of a reasonable type of UFO investigation. I mean, that the complaint is there's nothing to study. Lights in the sky, they're gone. Ted figured out there is something to study, that witnesses would report these landings, and then at the site there was physical evidence, indications that something really did set down. Discuss the kinds of evidence that he was able to come up with and document, and where that information, how it helped the topic overall. Yes, and
Ted was I started out a lot like Ted. Ted initially was a nuts and bolts man, and he liked the structured craft cases, and the bulk of it was that at the time. But he learned a lot through Allen and Jacques that the things went through they morphed into another. Ted always felt like as our technology increased, they lowered the risk factor, and it moved out of the structured craft more into the light ball phenomena that you hear it's so prevalent now. And it got in more into the paranormal aspect and the dimensional aspect. And like Ted, I didn't want to go there in the beginning, but Ted's unique ability, Ted was scientific. He had that mind that he went where the data led, and that's what he dealt with. So he ended up a different critter as I did, dealing with this over the years.
But studying landing site trace cases was a great way to start, though. Do you have a foundation that if some scientist said there's nothing to study, well, yeah, there is. I mean, these things, the witnesses see the craft set down, and there is on the ground, there's baked soil, radiated soil, burned vegetation, tree limbs that are lopped off when these creatures, these craft are seen. There was something that if you really wanted to study something, there it was, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Could you tell us about maybe one of the famous cases that our audience might resonate with? The Delphos, for example. You remember that one?
Yeah, the Delphos case, and here again, after Ted passed, I spent a lot of time going through his office, his research, and actually Ted had several pounds of the actual soil samples from Delphos. And, it to this day, and I just gotta let the cat out of the bag here. I did experiment a little bit with a few samples myself, and to this day, it remains hydrophobic, that it won't absorb water. And they did the scientific analysis on it, and, really couldn't, it was just a unique specimen that was more or less, it was determined it was not of this earth. And, Ted actually had, they took one photo there. The Johnson family had one Polaroid piece of film left, and there was a glowing ring put down on the ground, and they took the image with it. They actually gave Ted still has that camera in his office, the original camera, and I looked at that, and but, the soil sample, the white powdery substance that, of course, that one of the investigators rubbed his face, it burned his eyes, caused numbness, and the mother, actually, of the family had rubbed her leg, and several years after the fact, she still had a numb, dead area on her leg where she rubbed her leg with that substance. So, like you said, it's a very real, it's tangible, it's, people say, well, why can't you prove this stuff? Well, you can prove it, so...
At what point did you intersect with Ted? How did you meet him? Was it in Missouri? Was it because you were both there, or what?
Yeah, I always followed Ted. I so respected the man's work over the years. And a very great state director named Bruce Whitteman from Missouri was one of the first ones for MUFON in Missouri. Of course, MUFON originated in Missouri. And we just lost Bruce this year. He passed away with cancer. But he put on some of the best state conferences anywhere in the world at that time. And I got to meet Ted. I was helping Bruce, got to meet Ted, and offered him my assistance, not thinking in a million years he'd take me up on it, and he did. And it was a mutually kind of beneficial. I went out there and did a lot of the running wires, putting up cameras, and we became close friends. And that's how we started back in 2000.
And what is when he first told you about that area, Marley Woods, what did he say? Did he ease you into it, or did he just hit you with it all at the same time?
He actually asked me if I'd accompany him on one trip, and I did. And he warned me about some of the activities out there, what you might encounter, and the high strangeness of it. And I went out there, and actually I did encounter some things on my first trip. And it's just a unique place, I will tell you, that, there's so many things out there, the light ball activity, unseen force, cryptid activity, paranormal aspect of it, crop circles, or as Ted called them, agroglyphs, we had to refer to them as, and just... You name the activity, and it's at Marley, and it's so much like Skinwalker that, even when Jacques Vallée visited us, and he spent time and worked with us out there, and Douglas Trumbull, I might add. Jock said that he thought that Marley actually had a higher potential for high strangeness than Skinwalker, and that's saying quite a bit, as you know. So.
There's a great photo of you with Jacques Vallée and Ted that was taken, I guess, somewhere near Marley Woods or in it, right?
That was in
on
it.
your web. Yeah, that's a cool photo. That's a something that should be in a big frame or a poster. So walk us through it. How long has the activity been going on at this Marley Woods area, and does the public generally know where it is?
It's been going on. We've tracked it back past 3 generations. Ted suspected it went into Native American culture, but we could not find any. There is no presence of Native Americans in that area for a long time, but we do feel it went back that far. So it's got a pedigree that goes back several generations, and it's just, and Ted, it drove Ted crazy to try to find out what differentiated Marley from any surrounding area, and we never could come up with anything geologically, topography, or in any way that separated, except that Ted always felt, and Ted said in the beginning, if you would have said this portal to him, you should have just smacked me, Ted said, but he took imagery and actually caught things going in and out. We felt that there were absolutely 2 portals out there, maybe 3, and so that's what we dealt with when we were out there.
How big of an area, and is it fairly well defined? Is there a line which, inside this line things happen, outside it doesn't happen?
There are, like, for the 2 of the portal areas, there absolutely is a definite location. You're dealing with an area about 2 miles east and west and 3 miles north and south. One ranch is comprised of around 1,200 acres. The other one is around 800 acres, and that's quite a bit of real estate for a small team that we dealt with. And you're dealing with an intelligence that will run you. When things start happening on one end, and we'd split up, they would shift to another location, but there absolutely is an intelligence out there. So you're dealing with a lot of real estate.
And describe the terrain. It's wooded? Is it an actual woods?
Yes, it's prairie. It's heavily wooded areas, very hilly, remote. You're talking access through gated, and there again, that's it was a pristine area as far as research because you're dealing off a small paved road onto a gravel road which runs into dirt roads. So there's really nobody else in there that can be in there but us. And, it was just so challenging. And I know you're probably aware, I worked a lot of years to make this happen, and we did actually get in there and we documented. We did do a show with Ben Hansen and on UFO Witness. And we spent time, and we did film quite a bit out there. And but I will tell you the backstory about events that we really felt that, and I felt that the intelligence out there, through events that occurred, did not want that to happen. And
really,
yeah, it's the people we worked with, they were great people, and Ben and that we were out there, but. From the get-go, and I might just add that the property, the largest, the 1,200-acre sector of it is what we referred to as Site 2 and 3. And Site 1 is on a different property owner, and that's about the 800-acre parcel. Now, we had permission, it's the first time anything ever been filmed out there, was on Site 2 and 3. And I was great friends with a gentleman that owned the property. We finally I got his trust. We got out there, and from the get-go, the man had called me a week before it happened, and of course it's a remote area. Just a sequence of events started happening. such as the water tank blew out. He informed me we wouldn't have running water at the ranch. Then it rained just unusually hard. And all the years I was going out there, he warned me that if we did get in there, that the dirt road was almost impassable due to all this rain. And we got out there, and I decided to go forth, and we tried it, and we had people stuck at times, and getting around was such a labor, and but we went ahead with it. So, and when Ben and Melissa got out there on the ranch, from the time they got set foot on the property driving in, they had kind of an eerie feeling, and Ben always synchronized his watches with Melissa, and she just got a new watch, and they drove onto the property. Well, her new watch quit. We had typical equipment, batteries draining, that sort of thing, just like Skinwalker, I might add. And it just went on and on from there. And, we had we were lucky. Ben had brought a state-of-the-art piece of thermal imaging equipment, and we proceeded to catch and actually Ben thought, he said, I've got something here, and he said it might be a small animal, and from my past experience, I told Ben, I said, well, no, that's spherical, and it's off the ground, Ben, and he said, oh, yeah, you're right, and we couldn't see it with a naked eye. I had night vision equipment. We couldn't pick up on it. So there again, with that piece of equipment, over the years, had we had that thermal imaging unit, I thought how many times we might have perceived this. It might have been the precursor to when this came out of the dimensional area into our vision. But it went on and on. That night we had experiences. I had a meter, and most of the damage, as I know you remember, was due to microwave radiation, as they're finding out in Skinwalker. I had a piece, I felt in my duty to protect people. I had invested in a piece of equipment that was just in the microwave spectrum. 3 times out in the middle of the field that night, this piece of equipment, it had visual cues and audible. It went from green, yellow into the red area, which you better not be in that area very long, and it would go off. And I told Ben, I truly believe it's just letting me know that it's still there and it doesn't want us there.
Did Ted Phillips fill you in on the overall picture, or he give you little bits and pieces and figure you'd learn about this on your own?
I did know the backstory actually from his lecture on it, and but he did fill me in on a lot of the different things that was personal to him, and there were certain aspects. He told me about a phenomenon out there, and here again, there are things that it dwells more in the paranormal than actually in the ufology. But I will tell you, over the years working with these people, the paranormal, ufology, cryptids, it all comes from the same source, as Jacques says and taught us. It's dimensional, and but he told me about the phenomena that during the night, things at times can work on you, and actually he told me about this phenomenon. And one night I was there, and I actually felt something shake me and wake me up, and I woke up I can't describe it. It was just a state of euphoria, and I ran out on the deck that was on our office out there, and I expected to see the mothership, and it almost went from euphoria. There was nothing out there that I could sense. I actually, now that I know what I know, I absolutely believe there was something there, but it almost went into depression, and I went back in and woke Ted up, which is something you didn't want to do, and I told Ted about what had happened, and he just looked at me, rolled over, and said, well, welcome to Marley, Tom. And but then, I had that same trip. I had seen the one portal, the light source, Ted called it, and he took imagery of it, and it absolutely, when he broke it down, it absolutely looked like a doorway, and he did get images of things coming in and out of that portal.
Is it a light? Can you see a light coming in or out? Or is it square? Or is it round? How big is it?
It appeared as just a bright orange-yellow light behind the timber, and we knew the exact location of it there, which was, as the crow flies, about 1.5 miles away. And on one occasion, we learned something very, informative. We learned how directional these portals can be, because we got in my vehicle, we drove over we knew the exact location. So we got where we thought, and the property owner was back on the deck where we had left on Site 1, and we got to Site 2 and 3. Couldn't see no artifact of this light whatsoever, nothing unusual. And just as a fluke accident, turning around, I stepped on my brakes, and we had walkie-talkies at the time. My brake lights came on, and the property owner radioed us, and he said, well, your brake lights are right next to the light source. And here again, we could see no artifact of the light. He was viewing the light source, the portal, from his vantage point right next to where we were parked. So that was very beneficial. It proved how directional these can be, which explains so much. You hear in ufology, one person sees something, the person next to him doesn't. And
right.
So it's really a complex mechanism that happens sometimes.
You mentioned about Native Americans, that there's no tribe there now, no presence, but there was. What tribes were there before? It
would have been the Osage that would have been there at that time.
And do they have property, reservation of any sort in the state of Missouri anymore, or has it been all just
not in Missouri anymore? No, not any active. And for a long time we hadn't found any artifacts of that culture there, and then the property owner actually exploring a spring. There's a full-time spring that runs year-round there. They did some plowing, and they came in and opened this area up a little more, and they actually found a lot of arrowheads, like grain grinding bowls and tomahawks, and so they did find. It was the first actually evidence that there had been a culture there. So. But, for a long time, we couldn't even prove that.
We'll come back to this, the presence of Native American culture, and not only historical, but current, with other hotspots. Come back to that. In regard to Marley, was Ted first contacted by the property owners, or did he hear about it in some other way? I'm just wondering if they were reaching out for help because strange things were happening on their properties. Yeah,
the property owner at Site 1, which he is a prolific writer. He writes diaries, takes photos. He's got volumes of photos, and he's just a prolific writer. He actually wanted answers, and back in I guess it was about actually like 90 when he contacted MUFON, and he was looking for answers. And at the time, he contacted again the state director, Bruce Whitteman. And at the time, Ted wasn't in MUFON, but he was a personal friend of Bruce Whitteman's. And Bruce asked him if he would investigate it. And Ted initially, he was busy, and he kind of put it back a while. And he started reading the reports, and it was so similar to what he had investigated before. He got out there and met the property owner, and from the get-go, he started... actually, like he said, instead of chasing breadcrumbs, he actually had started seeing actual light balls and the unseen force damage done by them, and, of course, agroglyphs. And there again, cattle mutilations. We've had it all out there. So, but that's how Ted was brought into this.
Let's go back to this agroglyphs. I mean, big ones like the ones you see in English crop fields, or smaller, or like the saucer nests of old, or what?
As Ted would describe them, back the description, like you said, they were more like saucer nests, smaller ones, and incredible things put down like in like a 12-foot cattle run. There would be a 10-foot ring put down perfectly between two barbed wire fences. Now, what is the purpose of that, except we felt it was demonstrating its ability to us. We really felt that. So there is that intelligence.
With the animal mutilations, is it cattle?
Yeah, cattle, and then, of course, there was a horse barn incident where a horse was mutilated in a barn. And but over the years, there had been deer found, and, you know, they had come up with no good reason that 10 or 12 deer, no outward signs, and the vet examined them, couldn't come up with a cause of death. So you have deer, horse, cattle, and, you know, we've over the years, we came to one conclusion, that we actually thought a lot of this was to use fear, to generate fear, either as a tool to manipulate people or to actually, Ted called it his living laboratory, and at times we felt like we were in its laboratory. It was experimenting on people. So
yeah. So about the property owners, are they frightened? I know that Ted had shared with me that it was important to keep the location quiet because you didn't want it to be overrun with UFO hunters and the kinds of pressures that have happened at Area 51 and Skinwalker Ranch.
That was the property owner's biggest fears, and to this day it is. And you know, that's why it was so hard for me to get this show on with Ben, you know, UFO Witness, and he owed it to the witnesses, you know, and here again, the eyewitnesses, they wouldn't even share things with family members sometimes. They would share with us and Ted. So what possible motive would there be if they wanted to keep it secret and, you know, never be known for it? And Ted had over 200, and I think the last count was 256 local witnesses around that area. So, and I will tell you, to this day, the property owner's biggest fear, and this goes into, you know, George, I can tell you, unfortunately, we had developments why I feel that, except for myself, Site 2 and 3 have been shut down now, and the family, actually, we had a fatality out there. The property owner, Site 2 and 3, which was a wonderful man. He was a John Wayne type individual. I dealt with him a day before we filmed. I just loved the man. And he wanted to do, when he seen how we did it in the crew, he wanted to do more. And the night we filmed out there and investigated with Ben and Melissa, he wanted to be a part of that so much, and he started feeling weak, and he couldn't. He said he had to go home, and he really hurt him that he couldn't take part in it. So we went on, and unfortunately, after we filmed, just weeks later after we filmed, his family called me, and he had a stroke on the ranch, and he passed away.
Wow. That's kind of quite a coincidence.
The family felt they locked it down. They said, except for you, Tom. You know, and there's been injuries to people on the property before involved with this phenomenon, like, you know, Skinwalker has. So it's not fun and games sometimes. And except for me right now, the place is locked down on 2 and 3 site.
Oh, that's a shame. I certainly will understand it. Tell me this. You said it's sort of a paranormal hotspot. So in what way do you mean paranormal? What kinds of things? Creatures, entities in the house, around the people, or around the investigators? What?
All the above. We've had experiences out there that, you know, when Douglas Trumbull was out there, Jacques Vallée was out there with us, and Douglas had a very expensive, he made a piece, he was trying to make camera equipment to capture this phenomena, and not only structured craft, going into different light spectrums and as such, motion activated. And we had a particularly bad weather evening out there, and we decided to put this, and the property owner was out there. He had a piece of a camera equipment on a very heavy tripod, weighed probably 75, 80 pounds. We put it in the north window in the old cabin. The property owner locked the door. We left it that night. The next morning, Jock and Ted and I and Douglas and the property owner showed up. Douglas, of course, property owner unlocked the door. Douglas went in, and I can't really use the language that we heard from Douglas, but he more or less said, who's messing with me here? And when we went in, Jock went in, and the camera had been turned 30 degrees away from the window physically. Now, what does that, Something was messing with us. The poltergeist activity, just so reported from the original team at Skinwalker, dealt with, so there was that type of poltergeist activity, paranormal entities like Skinwalker, and this is so Skinwalker-ish, floating, hovering, hooded figures. The caretaker seen, yelled at him in progression. One turned and looked at him. And believe me, Ted worked weeks to get the caretaker to describe. Finally, the caretaker told Ted that when the one turned around, it had a wolf-like face. Oh. And I don't have to tell you the significance of that. So
yeah. So, is the family under duress? Have they been sort of tortured by this whole thing, psychologically tortured?
Well, let me tell you something, George. They have put up the property owner, Site 2 and 3, tried to isolate his family. A lot of his family lives on parts of the land, but they don't go into that area very much, if ever. Now, the property owner, I will tell you, on Site 1, this was a development that, after we did that show, the property owner called me that night, and there was always, I'll be honest with you, a little bit of competition between the property owner, Site 1 and 2 and 3.
Oh.
That, like, I've got the most stuff going on now, and no, I do. So he viewed that show that night, and he called me, and these are gentlemen in their 80s. He called me, and this was before the property owner at Site 1 passed away, had a stroke. And he said, Tom, I'd really like to do something like that on my place. And I had brought offers to him before, and he didn't really want to do it. And I said, well, okay, if you're sure you want to do this, I'll see what I can do. So just as a fluke, the producers, I know some that are doing the Skinwalker now, and they're in production on a new Skinwalker. I know you probably know, but they contacted me, and I said, well, the property owner wants to move forward and do something. And they said, well, that's great. We'll plan on it. We'll start making. And we got down to we were going to go out and start shooting in a matter of a couple weeks. And I have my own idea what happened. The property owner of Site 1 called me one evening and said, Tom, it's off. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to ever have anybody out here anymore. My family got to me. We talked it over. And I'm just never going to. You're welcome out here and your team, what's left of it, but I don't ever want to film. I don't want to have that presence ever intruding on the place and filming anything, or virtually I have the feeling that they didn't want to aggravate this situation. Like at Skinwalker, right. You have the digging in the earth that seems to activate a response, and for whatever reason, filming and that kind of presence at Marley seems to aggravate it.
Yeah, well, that was true at the ranch too, the Utah ranch, because when I was told that the arrival of strangers, activity, making noise out on the range would stimulate. Yeah. Digging, of course, really got things going, but right. That was always part of it. The central question, of course, I'm sure is not answered, but why there? Why? In Utah, they looked at geology, at geomagnetic energy, and nobody could ever figure out why.
Well, I will tell you one thing, and now I'm going into a realm now that I never used to go into. Of course, the paranormal and all this. I was a structured craft man like Ted in the beginning, but I come also to accept a lot of the dimensional aspect and what's really going on with these portals in the dimensional base. And I will tell you that even in Missouri, for whatever reasoning, there is a there is an increase. I am I'm very good friends, and you had mentioned it. A very good state director now of MUFON in Missouri, and she's a board member of MUFON. And her and I started the dive team for MUFON, Debbie Ziegelmeyer. I'm sure you may be familiar with that name.
Yeah, sure. You mentioned about being a co-founder of what became MUFON's dive team. Can you tell me what kind of work, what kind of cases you and the dive team pursued? And were you ever able to employ those skills in the Marley Woods area? I don't even know if there's a body of water that is diveable.
There actually is to a degree, but the reason we started, Deb and I got together. We were both divers, and unknown to most of the public, that water is the one common factor. We feel that in 2/3 of reported cases, in some way, shape, or form, water is involved, whether it's a farm pond or even such things as remnants of pond scum being found on cars in conjunction with UFO sightings or the deep water sightings. And Debbie devoted a good deal of her life to that. She actually just wrote a book, The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways, she just came out with, and it's a life's work on UFO water-related cases. And we dealt with things. We investigated like Shag Harbor and a Puerto Rico case, and never really came up with anything, but we had a quarry in Missouri. We trained divers. We even submerged a large satellite dish for a target and found out just a large structure, the dish itself. We could, from the compass anomalies, we could find the dish just through what it did to our compass. So we learned a lot of things. I think we were the only ones that ever actually trained on that sort of environment. And but it did lead into Marley. We did have a lot of reports, again, of light balls going in and out of ponds. And, but I will tell you that there was a determination with all the great minds far above my pay grade that I've worked with, that there are consonants, there are conclusions drawn, and I will tell you that, of course, with Jacques, that the dimensional aspect of it has been proven, and we feel we proved that at Marley. And so, but that's what we did with the MUFON dive team, and then later, Ted, we used it with Ted in conjunction with his SIU team, and so there is that connection there. But the high strangeness of it, I will tell you, over the years, there are definite conclusions about what this is all, the phenomena is, and what's really going on. And through Debbie, I will tell you, I don't know if the dimensional boundaries, I feel, are weakening the time we live in right now. But Debbie informed me, she's state director, and she sends people out on cases. In Missouri, I will tell you that even in Missouri, there are 2 more hotspots now approaching the activity of Marley Woods. And a couple other state directors I know are informing me that this is becoming more and more prevalent. Now, again, with the conclusions some of my mentors have formed, that I feel I think I got a handle on why and what this is going on, but it is becoming more frequent, and there's more Marley Woods, there's more Skinwalkers, and worldwide, I will say.
Seems like, at least at the Utah Ranch, it would give us glimpses, to give the team, the investigators, glimpses of other realities, call it. Yes. But it always called the shots. And, they would get to see little bits and pieces here and there. It was always frustrating that they didn't get any solid answers. It was a lot of mind games. And one of the things that would happen is people who went there and experienced something took it home with them. One of the spookiest aspects of the whole paranormal angle.
Yeah, the hitchhikers.
It was hitchhikers. So is there anything like that at Marley?
I never personally experienced that. Ted did. There again, it hits everyone different, and this gets into touchy area. It gets into individuals' belief systems. I will tell you the one commonality that there's one thing that carries through every individual that I've ever worked with, and I've been fortunate. I've I've even spent time with, I know you know Dr. Carol Rosen,
Sure.
Von Braun's assistant. She told me about a lot of this and what Von Braun warned, about the paranormal, the dimensional aspect, and the false flag scenario that's going to happen. And I had that echoed to me from people like Stanton Freeman, a little bit from Ray Stanford. Ted was that way, of course, Jock, and on and on and on. Their conclusion is that this is all dimensionally based. The paranormal structured craft, it all is dimensionally based. And that upsets a lot of ufologists when I say that, and they say, well, you don't believe in life on other planets. I said, no, I absolutely do. But from what, like Stan Freeman, the nuclear physicist, told me, if it goes through the interdimensional realm, it can be interplanetary and all the above. But
yeah, right.
But when it's on our side, it just and I was a Star Trek fan when I was a kid, and it broke my heart when Stan told me, he said, well, Tom, you do realize that we'll never attain light speed in a craft because the amount of energy to drive a solid object the size of a pea would take the combined energy output of the Earth for 100 years. So he broke my heart when he told me that, but I truly believe, I come to learn that and find out that the dimensional that is where the source of all this. Now, at Marley, I will tell you, the older people, some of this is to them demonic, and some of it isn't. And some individuals don't look at it that way at all, and a lot do. I will tell you that more are. And I've been fortunate over the years. Missouri MUFON had a very great a gentleman, a Reverend John Schroeder, and I learned a lot from that man. He was a great investigator, and I, as a youth, I had an individual, a Father Ildefonse, that talked to me about UFOs, the paranormal in the Vatican, and a Dr. Arnold Murray, and even I followed Father Malachi Martin,
Right.
And I will tell you that the source is, and it doesn't matter if you're an atheist or religious person. It doesn't change the facts. And and believe me, when I got into this years ago, I never thought I'd be as Ted did. He even broke up with Alan Hynek for a year and a half over this because he just didn't want to go there. But I will tell you, the people far above me, and I heard it echo so much. I go where the facts lead, and that's what I've come away with.
It's kind of hard to figure out if there's an agenda. So the question is, you've seen portals, what you think are portals, and things come in and out. And there's obviously a multitude of different kinds of phenomena. Is it all the same phenomena taking different guises, or is it multiple phenomena from multiple places with multiple agendas? Do you know?
I had that. I posed those questions to a lot of people, and when this stuff it may be manufactured, I truly believe that, and they're not really even honest about that. As even Von Braun, and that there's going to be a false flag operation one day overtaking mankind, and when we're at our worst, they're going to come and they're going to have all the technology, all the bells and whistles, and our welfare is not their motivation for this. It's our relationship will be in serving them, and but it's a false flag that a lot of this. But when it comes across, I will tell you, the entities, the cryptids, it's just as solid. As you and I, it leaves physical trace. We had hair samples in Marley Woods, our large 300-400 pound / polar bear sloth type animal that was shot a couple times. We had DNA done, microscopy done on hair samples. Came back no known match. We took plaster cast. Ted did compaction test, estimated it at 300-400 pounds, the same as what the rancher had estimated. So now, do we believe there's a living, breeding population of these type of cryptids there? No. When they come across the dimensional boundary, they're there. When they're not there, they're not there. And some of these entities have the ability, we truly feel, they don't need a portal. They have the ability to step in and out of that dimensional boundary, and that's why we feel we've had Bigfoot sightings near Marley. But they have that ability that I truly believe they can be right next to you and step through back and forth, and you're not going to catch them. You're not going to,
Wait, who shot him? I mean, why would you shoot him?
Well, one of the ranchers out there, the gentleman that had passed away now in Site 2 and 3, he felt threatened by it and his livestock, and he shot it, and he claimed he made it red, and we got there, and we didn't find blood, but we did find 16-inch long white hairs that nothing has that in that area. We had the tracks unknown. They were unlike anything. They had characteristics of several animals, but they were unlike anything. So he did, but there again, then his daughter sighted this thing the next day, uninjured, and there was actually 2 of them at one time. So, and we get so many one-timers in Marley, what we call one-timers. It'll be this white sloth-type animal, and then there'll be the typical, like Ted used to call them, critters, like the little grays and things like that people deer hunting will find. And and then the light beam activity that's out there that comes out of nowhere. And Ted and I experienced that, a strong light beam that hit us.
Missouri is the show me state, so if somebody asked for evidence, you could show them. I mean, do you have light beams on video? Do you have photos of the agroglyphs and the footprints and things of that sort?
We got the hair samples, the DNA, some of the early DNA work, which is pretty crude, but it is there. So, absolutely, and so many people say that, well, the evidence, it is there, believe me. And
has the public figured it out? Do you have trespassers showing up, UFO enthusiasts who trample all over the ranches, anything like that?
We've had that to a degree out there, and that's what always troubled the ranchers. One of the ranchers, actually, his nephew was a deputy sheriff, and they've had to escort people out from time to time. One individual actually pitched a tent on the property out there, and he did it in the midst of where the rancher had run a bunch of cattle in there, and one was actually a longhorn. So he more or less, the rancher found his gear all there, and the individual was gone, never did see him again. So, but I always tell people to respect these people's privacy. You don't know where the active sites are. They're almost a mile in, usually, from the access points. It's not going to do you any good to get on and intrude on these people. So why do it? Why? You're not going to benefit. So,
is there anything like where it feeds on fear that the ranch family at Skinwalker believed that it seemed to get some thrill out of or energy out of scaring the heck out of them?
We absolutely believe that. There again, and we believe that a large part of this, as I had explained to me, a large part of this presence is, I want to say, and it is evil, what it does. A large part of what comes across does not have the authority to be there. And as the Native Americans called it, the tricksters, we truly believe they use fear for motivation and as a tool. And, as such, the horse barn incident that we had a horse, and I know you know the story where the rancher came by, fed his horse, and was within sight of the barn, come back minutes later, seen the gate was ajar, go in, and find this horse exploded as if it was in, it was like it exploded. There's hunks of horse flesh in the rafters. We took blood samples. There were no explosives involved in this incident. So, and believe me, the rancher, he ended up, it was his favorite horse. He ended up burning the barn down. We took some samples. We were going to go back, and he actually had burned the barn down. He couldn't even stand to look at it. And the surrounding ranches and people, I can't tell you, and you can imagine the fear that's instilled in these people. Now, we could think of no other what would do that and why, and for what other purpose than to instill fear.
This intelligence, it is an intelligence that is there, and it's elusive. And it if it didn't want you to see anything, you wouldn't see it, right? I mean, it's not like you surprise it out in the woods and you didn't know you were coming, right?
No, you're absolutely not going to surprise it. And as I told Ben Hansen several times when we were there and on film, I said, Ben, with all my heart, I know this stuff. I felt it before. It knows we're here. It's monitoring us. It's going, just be careful. And Melissa, when she was there with us, several times she stopped and she said, I just don't feel good. I feel, and one time she noticed, my hearing's not that good over the years, but she was the first one that picked up on the cue that all the insect noise, the sounds of the night, when she stopped and dropped one of her pieces of equipment, and we have that on camera. She said, do you guys hear that? It's everything just went dead. I mean, it was just dead still, and she said, and we felt it, that you just felt like something was going to come through. You felt like any minute, anything could happen, and you just had that feeling. And it's so much what they're doing, you experienced and Skinwalker does now.
Yeah, as with the Utah ranch, at times, whatever the intelligence is there, it would allow you to get a glimpse and allow you to feel good. I mean, that was an overwhelming sensation on the property, sometimes feel really good, and other times a sense of dread, absolute terror for when some of these blue orbs and other things would show up. Is there an equivalent to that where it has different moods, kind of a... Yeah.
That myself, like I said, I was physically shaken, woke up out of a dead sleep, and I can't explain why or how. I had this state of euphoria. I went on the deck expecting, I didn't know what I was going to expect, and it turned instantly into depression. And for the life of me, I can't explain that, but it happened. So it's an intelligence you're dealing with, and I believe it's far more than people actually, and more coming to the aspect of this that, a lot of this interdimensional that's happening more, it could be biblical, and I'm beginning to go that way myself.
Tom, earlier in our conversation, you had mentioned about the interaction with the Skinwalker crew and the possibility that Marley would be featured on that TV program. It didn't work out, but is there a sense that those researchers and investigators want to compare notes with you guys and your team?
We initially started out that way, and that still may be possible. We still got some irons in the fire. And I will tell you, of course, for a short time with Ted, we did have a connection with Robert Bigelow, and
right.
And Colm Keller was out actually at Marley. So, we did work. It just didn't work out, but we really respected each other and got to know each other. And but the current skin, I'm still working with some of the producers out there, and. So we'd still like to get something together, and it a lot depends on the property owners. It's just unfortunate, and you can imagine the situation I was in. We were going to start production in 2 weeks, and I have to tell these people it's off. So
yeah, oh boy, yeah. Yeah, I was, of course, instrumental in introducing Ted to the NIDS people. Or actually, it became Bass later, but and tried to set things in motion. It didn't work out,
Yeah.
People want to control, folks, this is a big mystery, and people want to control all the input and output of investigations like that. So it's too bad. Is it solvable? Do you anticipate that you'll figure something out and get some answers in your lifetime or ever?
I truly do. I absolutely do. And there again, I would just like to, with what's going on in the situation in the world right now, that and Ted was there again, Ted was friends with so many people, and we didn't even get into Moonshaft, which that is such an incredible story. And we were working with Ben Hansen, and we still are, but there again, another trip planned to go back. Ted had been there twice. But I do believe that, and actually the Moonshaft artifact, Ted was made aware that there is actually 6 of those that are known around the world. And I do actually believe that this machinery, this instrumentality, that self-maintaining is going to play a part in as what some people call disclosure. I have my own thoughts of that, and I make people mad when they ask me about what I believe about disclosure. But I do believe that this false flag operation that's going to come to pass, that this instrumentality is all part of that. And at the right time, this stuff is all going to activate. And but it's just an incredible story. And but I believe we're going to get to the answers in our time. I absolutely do.
Well, tell me about Bradshaw Ranch. How did you get involved with that?
It was an ongoing thing for 4.5 years. I'd been wanting to go out there because I'd heard the rumors, of stuff going on. I get a letter a couple of days later from Linda Bradshaw, and she said, "Would you please come out to the ranch?" Because I'd written a couple of books, so people knew who I was. She gave me some photographs. The first orb photographs were taken by Linda Bradshaw and Linda Crystal in Pine Bush, New York. Linda Crystal and Linda Bradshaw, and they're both gone now. They both passed away. The orb photography, orbs spread around the world. I don't understand that, but within months, orb activity spread around the world. So Linda and I did a lot of research on orbs. Like I said, I spent 4.5 years out there. And there was the famous Vortex. It wasn't just there once, because when I got interviewed last time on the History Channel, I think the guy assumed it was only there one time, and I didn't know that. That's what he was asking about, but now I do. Now I know that he thought it was just a one-time thing, but it wasn't. It was there all 4.5 years. It was big, a big portal, 20, 30 feet across, by the ranch house, very close to the ranch house. Me and Linda used to joke. Sometimes we felt like we were in Times Square. We could feel so many things moving around us. We thought that they could see us, but we couldn't see them. But they had an odor. A lot of times they had smells, sometimes very bad, sometimes very good.
Is the portal that you're talking about, is that one of the pictures in your book, Merging Dimensions, the new edition? Yeah. Is that the one that's kind of got that light trick pole in it?
Yeah. Bill Hamilton used to work with us. At the time, he was the top UFO researcher in the world. And that photograph is the same photograph, but it was taken in 1950, and it is the same photograph, almost. There are differences. That one that is in my book was taken at the Bradshaw Ranch. So Bill accused Linda and I on national forums of being liars, hoaxers, and we had a hard time living that down because Bill kind of claimed that we stole it. We plagiarized it, and we didn't. That was actually taken by Linda at the Bradshaw Ranch. How that coincidence occurred, I don't have any idea, but we had a hard time with that, being accused of faking that photograph. And
that was by someone that's one of us that said that about you.
Bill Hamilton was the top UFO researcher in the world at the time. Interestingly enough, I say in my talks, I talk to audiences often, and I'll say I can prove, I'm not just blowing steam out of my ears. Whatever I talk about, I can prove it. You question me and I can prove it. And if you prove me wrong, that's the end of it. So Bill and I were standing out in the field by the Bradshaw Ranch, and we were just talking, and this 50-foot orb rose out of the ground right in front of us, maybe 30 feet away from us. It was a white orb. It came right out of the ground, and this sort of thing was happening in Crestone, Colorado, because I was in Crestone where this stuff was going on. These orbs coming out of the ground, like a bubble, just drifting right out of the ground. So Bill and I just kind of dumbfounded watching this thing float up to about, 300 feet or so, and it suddenly turned into a single-engine light plane, Cessna. Suddenly it had, lights flashing all around us, all around the plane, the engine sounds, all that, and then it flew off right over Sedona. I thought Bill was going to pee his pants like me. He said, I saw something like that once at the Tehachapi Pass, just really casually. So I mean, stuff like that. That's what happened at the Bradshaw Ranch. You know, you got used to it after a while, and we had TV crews week after week after week, and celebrities, famous people. I actually got bored being interviewed after a while because it was the same sort of thing every week. But the thing is, Linda and I desperately needed sophisticated scientific equipment because all we had, that's all we could afford, was 35 millimeter point and shoot cameras and spotlights and binoculars and that sort of thing. But that's all we could afford. And there were no VCRs back in those days that would film at night. Now they all will. I have two Sonys now that are zero lux cameras that will film anything the human eye can see at night. And we didn't have cameras like that back then. So we would beg the camera that would film at night was $100,000, the ones that the film crews used. They would see the same things we would see. You know, they'd be dumbfounded. They'd be gobsmacked, the stuff they saw. We would ask them, go back to your superiors. I remember at Universal Studios, when you go back to your superior, your boss, tell them what you saw and tell them we desperately need a scientific equipment, and we will give them all rights to whatever they film. And if you don't trust us, loan us a cameraman for a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, and you'll get some, because we knew it was going to end. These things always do. So we knew that we were running out of time, but we never got anything from anybody, except a guy in Texas sent a pair of night vision binoculars that still work. Yeah, well, these were KGB. These are the best the Soviets had. They still work, yeah.
So when you wanted to do scientific research or experiment, what did you want to do?
Anything we could get, ground-penetrating radar. I know the Skinwalker Ranch guys pretty well, and Brandon Fugel that owns it. He's a friend of mine, a real gentleman. And so the equipment they're using, if we had a fraction of that stuff, because he's putting millions of dollars into that stuff on Skinwalker Ranch, and if we'd had a fraction of that on the Bradshaw Ranch, they'd still be talking. We'd have proof that people would still be talking about to this day.
I don't know. I think you've done pretty well with what you've got. Merging Dimensions is Tom Dongo's book, new edition. That's what you want to get now because it is, that's the new edition. So that's the one you want to check out. And you want to go to lighttechnology.com to see that and all the pictures that you'll see and the different stories he's talking about too. Tom Dongo, we're talking to, longtime resident of Sedona, Arizona, talking about different creatures, different experiences, things that he has seen with his own eyes. And he's written many books, actually. The Mysteries of Sedona, The New Age Frontier, The Alien Tide, Mysteries of Sedona, Book 2, The Quest. I'll ask you more about those. Unseen Beings, Unseen World, everything you wanted to know about Sedona in a nutshell. The Merging Dimensions is his latest, the new edition, and you can find these books at lighttechnology.com. Now, he's got his own website, tomdongo.com, but you can go to Light Technology, that's LIGHT, technology.com, and you can find his book right there on the front page. Tom, you've been doing this for so long. You've seen so many different things. And now, because you brought up the Skinwalker Ranch, which a lot of people know that name, and they know the Bradshaw Ranch name, and I can tell you there's these places are like all over. They're everywhere. They just don't have maybe a ranch name yet to them, but they're all over. Can you back that up too?
Yeah. Well, it's like the vortexes here. There's people think that there's only the four well-known vortexes in Sedona. Well, there isn't. There's hundreds of them in the canyons. And the Sonawa Indians knew where they were, and they often built their ruins on those vortexes. I call them energy springs. I don't know if they're really a vortex, but they're real. I did vortex tours the first 2 years I was in Sedona. So I got to watch people very carefully when they were in a vortex. I've only seen one physical healing, but many emotional healings after being in a vortex. I had a medical doctor friend that used to pay me a pretty good chunk of money to take him back in the canyons. He healed with energy, the medical doctor, and he healed with rocks. And I said, Doc, is that legal? Is it, He said, yeah, as long as it's ethical, we can do that now. And he did. He healed people with rocks. He bought them all over the world and he just put rocks on them and it healed them. So at any rate, he was incredible at finding, because he could see them and feel them. And he found most of the energy places in the canyons, and some of them are really powerful. The most powerful one we found was in Long Canyon, way back in Long Canyon, up in the cliffs in an Indian ruin. And you could sit there, anybody could feel it. I used to watch, because I knew where the vortex started, where the energy started, and it really affected women. Some women would start shaking and crying. I wouldn't tell them that they're walking into the vortex, but they start shaking and crying and felt it in their stomach and all that. And I think the vortexes were at a certain frequency, or whatever, 7.8 hertz or whatever, that healed people, hundreds of people, mostly women. I'd say 80% of the people that were affected by vortexes were women.
Did you walk into them and feel anything?
Here in Sedona, the strongest one is the airport vortex, which, I mean, it's unfortunately, there's so many people now that are going to these. They're overrun. It is, I think, too many people. It's overpowered some of the vortexes, but they're still there. This researcher that I used to know, he told me one day, he said, you know what? They probably all park their ships in the same garage. They have something in common. I have a theory that being a remote viewer and a psychic, there's something going on this planet that none of us understand.
Yes.
I've been trying to penetrate it, but there's something going on we need to know about, and we need to understand it. So,
but somebody doesn't want us to. Something big enough to be able to stop us. Does not want us to know.
I was in Denver about 20 years ago, and General Stubblebine was some of the world's best remote viewers were there in the audience. There were about 800 people in the audience. And he was saying even our best remote viewers don't know how to get through the blocks. And I wanted to jump up and wave my hand because I knew how. I learned early on how to get through those blocks. So I didn't. I just sat there. But I've been traveling to places. I run into these blocks, and in one case, I was trying to follow a person that had been snatched, killed. Just disappeared. It's one of these people that just, poof, they're gone. And I had the name and the location, so I was following him psychically. And, in one show, somebody said, were you going up or were you going down? And I said, we were going up real fast. I got somebody slammed on my brakes, my psychic brakes. And I'm just sitting there somewhere and out there in the ethers, nowhere. And a block is in front of me. But I'm stopped. I'm not moving. I couldn't keep up with the guy that had been taken, abducted, whatever. I heard a voice that said, "This is as far as you're going to go." So I'm looking around at the block. It's an actual block. You can see it as being a psychic. So then I'm thinking about how to get around it. And I could have easily gotten around it. But the voice said, "Don't even try it." So my question is, what was it that it, or whatever it is, didn't want me to see? Because, would it have opened up the mystery of what's going on this planet? And is this a prison planet? Is it some kind of an asylum? I'd like to know what's on the other side of that block. If I'd have tried it, I know what they can do to you. So I wasn't about to try to get around that block because, it probably wouldn't have been too good for me. But I wanted to know what they didn't want me to see. What was it? I've been in this all these years because I want to know what the hell's going on. Basically that.
Yeah.
And
well, I thought you said you could get past the blocks.
No. Well, I could. Yeah, I could. But actually, in minor cases when I didn't get warned, I did get around the case. Yeah, no, there's no danger. It was just a continuation of the trail I was on. But
no answer to what was behind the block? There was no answer?
No. Well, one time I did that. I got so far out in space, I got afraid that I wasn't going to be able to get back.
So the father of remote viewing, Ingo Swann,
right,
one of the greats, he had written a book called Penetration, and at one point in it, Oh, great book. Great book.
Yeah,
At one point he said to, I guess, the CIA guys or something, I think he was in a bathroom and he said, that's it. He got the answer of that's why you all have been suppressing our telepathy, our being able to talk with each other and knowing these things, our conscious and subconscious and all that. You all have stopped it so we wouldn't know the truth. So
Wow.
I remember that at one point. Do you remember that or do you feel something like that?
Well, that's a good point because I can speak to extraterrestrials, and they all speak telepathically. Most of them speak. They don't speak. They send pictures. You know, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that's what extraterrestrials will do. They'll send a picture to your subconscious, and you have to interpret it. You know, I used to do that a lot. I'm not interested in it anymore, but it's a very, very efficient way of speaking.
Skinwalker Ranch and Bradshaw Ranch, the differences or similarities, what would you say?
Yeah, I got interviewed by the History Channel a couple of months ago on just that. The difference is the Bradshaw, because I'm very familiar with the Skinwalker Ranch, and incidentally, I don't think it's ever going to be solved by technology. I think it's going to be psychics and remote viewers.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you know, when I was in Phenomenon in Utah, I was talking to George Knapp. I woke up in the morning in my hotel room. I saw the being that's on Skinwalker Ranch, and the thing is not. It's probably been there since time began. I got it to look at me. If I could get it to look at me, it has eyes of a sort. It doesn't want humans on that patch of land, and that's its goal is to get rid of them. So. I think that Skinwalker guys need to approach that instead of using, you know, rockets and lasers and all sorts of other things. So it's, you know, the stuff that's happened on the Skinwalker Ranch has been very violent, especially with the early ranchers that were there. I mean, it's extremely. So, and I'm able to scan things from a difference. I learned that at the Berkeley Psychic Institute. So I've scanned the ranch, the Skinwalker Ranch, and it's really dangerous stuff. So to compare it with the Bradshaw Ranch, the same sort of things happened on the Bradshaw Ranch, but nobody ever got hurt. It was never bad. It was benevolent, not malevolent. It's that the big difference between Skinwalker and Bradshaw is malevolent in the Skinwalker and benevolent on the Bradshaw. Actually, very good stuff. Linda and I, her husband Bob wouldn't come out. He had a spaceship land right in front of him. He was on national TV with this, and he said that was it for him. He wouldn't come out. He said, he wouldn't. I landed right in front of him in the orchard, a disc. So that was it for him. You know, he was a poor old redneck Arizona cowboy, and he'd stay. Linda could not get him to come out. She'd go in and say, "Bob, you've got to come out and see this. This is incredible." No, he'd stay in there watching TV. He wouldn't. We never once, but in 4.5 years, could get him to come out.
But that's what happens when you see something that you're not supposed to see, that's not supposed to exist, and it happens in front of you. It's like, oh my goodness, this is real. I've seen it with my own eyes. And I wonder if Skinwalker was a little nice at first, but because they tried so many experiments constantly that then they were like, get away, this is our area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it aggravated it.
Do you know why Bigelow sold it in the first place after he took it over?
No, I don't.
I wonder if he found out the answers he wanted.
Yeah, I don't think it was something that scared him. I think it just flattened out for Bigelow, and then Brandon came along and bought it. It's a real conundrum, though. And I don't think they're going to settle it with technology.
Let me ask you this. What's going on with Bradshaw Ranch now? Is that still happening, or nobody's there, or what's going on?
You know, it's still going on, but it's different now. And there are people that go out there a lot, and the Bradshaw Ranch is in ruins, totally ruins. The windows are smashed out, the weeds are hip high. The University of Northern California leased it from the Forest Service. It used to be signs saying this is U.S. government property. Violators will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And I was out there with a Japanese film crew about 10 years ago. And I said, make sure you guys get a good shot of that before we go over the fence with all this equipment. And they did. They got the lights on and the cameras, and then they passed me their $100,000 camera. We went over it, and that was a strange night. We heard noises inside that ranch house that scared the hell out of all of us.
Well, even if that ranch house is not there, who cares, right? I mean, you're still going to get the activity. Yeah,
exactly. So no, it's still going on. To give you an example, this just happened these guys were seasoned researchers with all the best equipment. So I interviewed them for 2 hours, but they got onto the ranch and spread out. Each one of them was in a different place. These are good guys. I know them personally now. They're after dark. Bradshaw Hill is above the ranch, and the road into the ranch goes up on Bradshaw Hill. So a car appeared. Tourists are out there all the time, the headlights and all that. So, but at any rate, this time the headlights started down into the valley where the ranch is, and it didn't go on the road. It went through the trees where even a tank couldn't drive. They knew something was up when they saw this. They watched the car, these headlights coming down as if it was on a road, and it got down into the flats. Instead of going through the gate, the metal gate, it went straight across, and it went right through a fence that the University of Northern California had put up, the chain link fence. And they had cultivated a field. They were going to grow research for native trees. And it went across that bumpy field very smoothly, like it was on a road. And it came around. All these three guys are all watching this. UFOs, by the way, can mimic a car perfectly. Headlights, tail lights, the whole deal. I've seen it a number of times. So anyway, it goes through the chain link fence again, just right through it, and stops. And one of the guys had seen a man wearing white pants down below walk towards the ranch. He was up there pretty high. So the car stopped, headlights, tail lights, door light opening, and a girl got out, and she was all dressed in white. So she ran around to the back of the ranch house, and the first thing I said, did she have time to pee? Was she just taking a pee? And they said, no, she did not have time. So the guy, whoever the guy was in white pants, must have left something there for her to pick up. And then she ran back and got in the car, and it went back across this bumpy cultivated field that was straight, just nice and smooth, and went through the other chain link fence, and then back up the way it came, through the trees, which is impossible. I always ask, because I've interviewed about 400 contactees and abductees. First thing I always say is, did you have any missing time? And got real interesting. Something that happened to all three of those guys while they were watching their car. But one guy, and they didn't use cameras. That's the thing. You can be watching something incredible and forget you've got a camera. Yeah, you're so flabbergasted by what you're seeing, you forget you've got a video camera right in your hand until it's all over. I
think it's beyond that. I think they make sure you don't.
Exactly. Yeah. They can completely control our minds.
They turn us off and on.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Their minds are so powerful, they can do just about anything they want, especially some of these aliens that are 3 million years ahead of us. So you can just imagine. I mean, I agree with Stephen Greer. The aliens are not our enemies. Because all the years I've interviewed all these people that had I'll finish the story in a second about the car. But I interviewed about 200 people that had abductee or contactee experience. And even though they had a terrifying experience, in every single one of them increased consciousness. I mean, they took better care of themselves. They ate better. They were kinder to people. They did good things for people across the board. Because I asked them, the whole life changed after the aliens, probed them or whatever they did. So that proves that the aliens weren't doing something totally mean and destructive to the human. They were doing something that was to help us. That's my conclusion. Because I mean, you hear these theories, they were eating us and all that stuff. I've never run across that. Bud Hopkins had some horrifically bad experiences with people he interviewed and hypnotized. A couple of them scared the hell out of me. I was listening to. I went to a meeting one time and I said, "Well, wow, man, that's not cool. That's not good." So
yeah.
Bud was quite a researcher.
Yeah, loved Bud's work and David's work, and I thank goodness I got to meet both of them really well. So
yeah. So anyway, so these three guys with all their equipment, they didn't use any of it. The car had gone back up the hill and disappeared, and the guy, the guy in the middle who was by the windmill, there's a big windmill there. He just wandered off. He got lost. The ranch was right there, but he turned around. And when they found him, he was completely disoriented. So something was done to him, obviously. And the other two guys felt kind of weird. So it's still going on. I mean, this is just a couple of years ago. So it ain't over yet at the Bradshaw Ranch. It's the energy of the place.
But the people, did they sell it? Well, wait a minute. I guess they did sell it. The couple that was there before, Linda and Bob.
Yeah, it's the U.S. government. Then the U.S. government leased it to the University of Northern Arizona, so they could do native plant research. That was the whole story. And they haven't done anything in 5 years. I think they read my books and it scared the hell out of them.
Do you know what the price was that they sold that for?
Yeah, $4.5 million.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I like people need to have more of an awareness of stuff that's going. There's a lot of invisible stuff that's going on around us, and it's starting to affect the whole society. Well, when I started out 50 years ago, I used to get verbally attacked all the time. Debunkers, skeptics, disbelievers, and now I never get attacked. It's fun now. But I gave up. I quit 3 times. I couldn't take the attacks, the insults and verbal abuse. So I've been on spoke to probably around 60 million people in the last 4.5 years, and I haven't been criticized or maligned not once. So I guess I must be doing something right.
Yay. Thank you so much. You're just wonderful. We got to do this again because I know we can. Thanks so much. Thank you. So Tom Dongo, thanks again. Get his book, Merging Dimensions, at lighttechnology.com, lighttechnology.com, Merging Dimensions, new edition.